Assalamu alaikum, I'm Hiba.
And I'm Zaid,
You're listening to Diary of a Matchmaker.
a podcast that will take you into our world as matchmakers.
We'll share our experiences and offer advice for the single Muslim.
So let's dive in.
Bismillah.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. Welcome to another episode of Diary of a Matchmaker. My name is Zaid, and on the other mic is my wife and co-host Hiba.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Alhamdulillah, we matched a girl recently, a girl and a guy obviously. And we were very excited because it was one of the quickest matches we've done. Girl signed up, and I think it was within a month, alhamdulillah, we were able to find a good match for her. And we know her pretty well, and we met up with her recently and asked her, how are things going? How are things moving along? And she was very excited. She said she's got her engagement scheduled, and they're planning a wedding date early next year. However, one frustration that she did mention is that she and the guy, they both wanted to have an early nikah. Mm-hmm. So that, of course, they can make everything halal, they can spend time together, go out, hang out.
More comfortable.
Just make it more comfortable, and, of course, keep everything halal. And, of course, what do you expect? Culture came into play, all right? Culture reared its ugly head, I guess. And, family got involved, and they said, no, we're going to have the nikah and the marriage on the same day. Mm-hmm. So I could understand where she was coming from and the frustration because, we live in a society that, that accepts guys and girls outside of the bounds of marriage, just hanging out, holding hands, kissing and things like that. And they just want to make things as legit as possible.
Yeah, even something as simple as a phone conversation. Without a nikah, it's going to be very, very formal. And you can express your excitement, your feelings. The girl has to always stay within her hijab, and it doesn't make it easy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's sad because I feel at least in the past 5, maybe let's push it back to maybe 10 years. This was, at least in Desi culture, it wasn't that common. Right, where you have a nikah and then a marriage maybe 3-6 months down the line. Mm-hmm. Usually nikah and marriage happens the same day. I've seen it with my friends. We actually did it too, where we had our nikah within the first week that we met, and then we wanted to have our wedding later on. Because it's like I said, people are expressing a need to be together, right? Yeah. To hang out, but do it under the umbrella of Islamic guidelines.
Yeah.
So why is it that there is so much pushback on this?
I think one of the fears is because if God forbids the wedding doesn't happen, they break up, then it's considered a divorce. Even though they haven't consummated the marriage, they haven't moved in together, but it's considered a divorce, right?
Right,
so that's
but which could also happen after the ceremony too.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think the other reason is that people don't want to say this, but the underlying fear is, what if they consummate and, God forbid, maybe she gets pregnant before the marriage date?
Which there's nothing wrong with that.
Islamically, there's nothing wrong with that.
Married.
Islamically, there's nothing wrong with that, but I can see from a cultural standpoint, oh my God, my daughter didn't even have the wedding ceremony, but she's pregnant. It looks weird, right? Okay, Islamically okay, but it does kind of still look weird.
In the Arab community, how does it happen? If the families are more on the religious side, then they would have a nikah early and wedding later. If they are not that religious, or maybe they're more cultural than religious, like in the case of my sister and her husband, for example, they had the nikah 2 days before the actual wedding, right?
Okay.
So it depends. But
so it's closer to the wedding. Interesting.
Yeah. So it depends, right? But let's say if a nikah happens before the actual wedding, then we don't have that fear of pregnancy and stuff, because it's understood that there's no consummation happens.
However, there's one thing I feel like you forgot to mention. When you guys do an engagement, Islamically, you're also performing the nikah. right? Islamically, you're married,
No.
right? Isn't that how it works in Arab culture?
No.
Katbul Kitab
Katbul Kitab is the nikah.
is the
Not
nikah.
engagement. So there is no concern about pregnancy because there is no consummation. It's just so the girl can take off her hijab, they can talk freely,
Spend time together.
But even some families, they don't allow the guy and the girl to even go out together alone, even though they had their nikah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's it for us. But I guess in the Desi community, if the guy and a girl have nikah, then it's okay to consummate?
No.
No.
As far as I've seen, no.
Okay.
They're not. So there's
it's the same thing.
Kind of. So there is a mutual understanding between families that there will be no consummation, but, you know, you guys can hang out and be free to do, you know, hold hands and whatever. But there's a mutual understanding that there wouldn't be any consummation.
Okay, so I guess it's the same way in our culture.
Yeah. And then that's the whole concept of rukhsati. Rukhsati means like, I think what it means is that it's letting go of the bride, right? So that now she is your responsibility, and so you are free to consummate this.
Okay. we call it tala'a. Tala'a as in getting out, when the girl gets out of her parents' house.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, there's a lot of commonalities between the culture.
Now, Islamically speaking, if the nikah takes place, there are legal implications. And there is a difference if the consummation happens or it doesn't happen. So let's say, for example, a guy and a girl, they have their nikah.
Mm-hmm.
If they haven't consummated, then let's say, God forbid, the marriage breaks apart.
Mm-hmm.
The guy has to pay half of the mahr for the girl.
Okay.
Before consummating. Unless the girl forgives.
Okay.
And it's encouraged to forgive. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَأَن تَعْفُوا أَقْرَبُ لِلتَّقْوَى. If you forgive, it's closer to taqwa. It's better.
Okay.
If the consummation happens, whether she moved in, whether they had the actual wedding itself or not, if the consummation happens, marriage breaks apart, then she's entitled to the full mahr, of course.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think sometimes people, they don't have this in mind and they get excited about having an early nikah, but without knowing the legal implications of that.
So I guess that means there's more of an argument to have the nikah and marriage ceremony together because... Right? Because because the way you just phrased it, I feel like there's a lot at stake.
Well, like you said, the marriage could fall apart after the wedding. So if you're
true.
coming to a marriage with this mentality of what if divorce happens, what if it doesn't work, then like you're coming with all these negative expectations, and so you don't want to come to a marriage with this kind of energy, right?
I mean, personally, we had our nikah. I don't know if I mentioned this in the beginning. We had our nikah, and then we early on, and then we planned a wedding later on. So I'm for an early nikah.
Yeah.
But after hearing, because I didn't know this piece, the legal implications. So I don't know. I guess it is kind of a scary thought.
It's not really, because like I said, like nobody enters a marriage with the thought of it breaking apart.
Mm-hmm.
So if you chose right, if you both assess compatibility before you actually had the nikah, if everything's clear, your deal breakers are clear, everything's okay, then there is no reason to fear the breaking of the marriage, right?
Right. Now, when we say early nikah, obviously we mean that after the necessary questions have been asked, right? After you guys have thoroughly assessed compatibility, maybe even gone through some premarital training, both the families are on board, all of those things. We're not talking about making an impulsive decision.
Of course not. Of
right?
course not.
So all of those things have been done, and then, now it's just a matter of waiting for the marriage date. Why wait?
So, the mistake that a lot of people, at least in my community, do, they have the nikah with the mentality that this is an engagement, and they actually start...
So that is a practice then?
Like, it's... I don't know, the way it's conceived, they do realize, they recognize that it's a nikah because they do the katb al-kitab, they do sign the contract, there is witnesses and all of that. But for some reason, they start assessing compatibility after the nikah happens because to them, consummation didn't happen. We didn't have a wedding. The girl is still living in her parents' house.
You guys work in reverse.
So the girl's still living in her parents' house.
Yeah.
This means they're not really married, right?
Even though they are.
Even though they are.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, like you said, like marriages, nikahs break. But
Right.
it's not because they had an early nikah, because they didn't do the legwork before having the nikah.
Right.
Yeah.
Are there examples that we can give from the seerah or anything from the Quran that you can think of?
Well, the Prophet ﷺ did marry Aisha when she was young, right? In Mecca. And then 3 years later, when she was at the marriage of like maturity,
Of biological age.
Exactly, they did consummate the marriage.
Right.
So it's not a foreign concept to like the culture, Islamic culture in general. So we are for having an early nikah. And again, when we say early, we don't mean early before you do the legwork.
Right.
Early as in before the actual wedding.
We're not saying make an impulsive decision.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like even if you think you're gonna be able to just control your conversations and have strict formal conversation, all of that, maybe it's gonna be easy in the first week, but later on it's gonna be very difficult.
Yeah.
If you want to keep things halal with the like having the barakah there, and you are certain about your choice about the person, then we do encourage having an early nikah. Even if you're not going to consummate, if there's an understanding between the families, you're not going to consummate, then you got to respect that, of course.
Yeah. Okay. So question for you. How should a girl or a guy talk to the parents about this? Parents are adamant. Mom, dad is adamant, saying, no, this is not acceptable. You guys can't have an early nikah, and we're going to schedule it along with your wedding. So how would you kind of guide them towards having that conversation?
So I would
with
try to understand from my parents why they have this concern, why they don't want to, why they want to push the nikah. If they have valid concerns that could actually be cleared, then maybe those concerns should be addressed. Like, for example, they say, we're still not sure about him. We're still not sure you are ready.
Right. Or maybe they just don't feel like you guys can set firm boundaries.
Maybe that too.
Right? Like maybe that, there needs to be, like, parents might not feel comfortable saying it, but like I said before, underlying fears, what if, there's consummation?
Right.
So figuring out a way to address that and setting boundaries to prevent that.
Yeah. So listen to their concerns. And maybe if they are legitimate and you see that, okay, maybe, they want to assess more, maybe whatever it is. And if their concerns are not legit, like, for example, he still doesn't have a house, for example. Well, that's not a condition for a nikah, right? He's still in university. So what? Right? So if the concerns could be cleared, then clear that with them. Remind them that we are trying to keep things halal. We're trying to keep the barakah in our relationship. We've assessed. We are sure about each other. Assure them that you're going to respect their wishes and their expectations. And if they're that stubborn, then there's no need to just create a fight over it.
Yeah,
just
be
control.
patient.
Be patient. Control yourself. Control the conversations, and inshallah, you're gonna get to that date.
Yeah. The one time I would be a bit concerned is if your parents are trying to push for you to have a wedding 2 years after your bat baki. Or what do you call bat baki in your Arab culture?
Qira'at al-Fatiha.
Qira'at al-Fatiha. Basically, both parents are on the same page and they're in agreement about moving forward with the marriage. And that's a recipe for disaster. Or, like, you do not want to have a long-term engagement. because you will always find something wrong with the potential spouse, right? Like this person does this wrong, they do this wrong, and the room for compromise kind of diminishes over time. So shorten the time frame as much as possible. If you are able to get an early nikah, do that. Make sure you are setting boundaries if your parents have any sort of concerns, and of course, as always, make dua.
Yeah, actually, I just remembered another 2 couples that we matched. They both had an early nikah, and then months later, they had the wedding and moved in together.
Yeah, you're right. Now that I think about them,
I think it's more now becoming more common amongst this generation.
It is. Actually, a lot of my friends did that. So I would say, personally, I've been seeing it for the past 10 years, and I hope it continues.
Yeah.
I really do.
We're
all for it. You know, any way you can, avoid fitna by trying to make things halal, by all means, go for it.
Yeah. So, if there are any specific topics you would like us to discuss, if we have some knowledge about it, we would love to dedicate an episode to that.
Or experience.
Yeah. So please leave a review, a comment, or send us fan mail. You can email us as well at info@halalmatch.ca, and we would love to take your suggestions. Until next time.
Assalamu alaikum.